like being together, right? And there's truly nothing like being following Jesus together as a church. That's what we're really excited. I hope you're excited about being here this morning, because there's a lot of things that are going to take place that we've already had some great celebration time with Emma and Paris being able to give their life to Jesus Christ. And I hope you're excited about that as well. One thing I want you to be aware of, and that is our summer studies. For those of you who were a participant in them last summer, we had a men's study and a women's study, and there are multiple ones all over the city. Lots of ways you can get involved. They met at different times, different places, different locations, studying the same passages of Scripture together. But it was an amazing opportunity for people just to gather, and we want you to be involved with that this summer. And so we would love for nothing more than for you to go to our website. Next week, you'll have an opportunity to sign up and register for those things, but you can go to our website, check out some information on that as well. Something else I need you to be aware of, and that is this Tuesday, our children's minister will arrive here in Dallas. Her name is Missy Farley. Missy will be here bringing all of her stuff and her belongings with her, and she's going to be moving from the state of Illinois down to Texas. She's never lived in Texas, and so we need to be able to give her a warm Texas welcome, especially a Valley View welcome. And so here's something I'm going to ask of you. I'm going to ask that you take out a card of some kind and you just write Missy a note of encouragement. Some say, hey, we're glad you're here, whatever you want to say to her. Some of you will be really good at that. Others of you will struggle with that, I know. But what I want you to do is take out a note, just write that down and put Missy's name on the envelope. Bring that back to church. Here's something else you could do. You could, if you'd like, if you would, bless her with something from this area, like a gift card from wherever your favorite place is to eat, okay? And let her know that she's welcome. Maybe Starbucks, Wendy's, McDonald's, even fancier than that, whatever you want to do for her, that would be awesome. Because when she gets here, we want to make sure she feels welcome because of this reason. Missy's worth it. She's one of those people who are going to be worth it to us. And that's literally our series that we've been kind of walking through. And last week I shared that idea where we defined who people are. We defined what worthiness means. We also gave you a little bit of a glimpse of to what it is. And it is whatever you choose to personalize that with. People are worth whatever you're willing to put in there. And last week I challenged you to define it this way, that people are worth my pursuit. That we'll go to great lengths to find those people outside the church that are lost. We'll go to great length to pursue those people who are not near to God. And I hope more than anything, that's just not a nod of your head. I hope you're not just saying, yeah, Joe, that's a great sermon. That's a great thing you said last week. I hope it actually becomes a part of the rhythm of your life. That you begin to look at people, not in the categories that you used to look at people, but in the categories the way Jesus looks at people, and those who are near, those who are far, those who are dead, Jesus said, those who are alive to him, those who are lost, those who are found. And that becomes a part of you, because more than anything, I hope it's not a nod of your head. I hope it becomes our identity. I hope that's the identity of our church. That it becomes the heartbeat of our church. Because if our mission of this church is to pursue those people who are far from God, there's an obvious question that you're going to ask when you go back and either listen to that message from last week, or as you think about what Jesus says here in a moment. But what about the countless people who are connected to him? If my purpose in life is to go after those who are far from God, what about those people like us who sit in this room who are actually connected to him? You know, if the equation that Jesus uses most often to describe what our responsibility is to those people who are lost, those people who are dead, those people who are not found, is 1 is greater than 99, if that's the equation that Jesus uses, then the logical thing that should run through your mind is, what value does the 99 have? If 1 is greater than 99, what is the value of the 99 to me? Because I know my responsibility to those outside the church is to pursue them. But what is my concern? What is my response to those who sit in a room like this? Let me make that a little more close to home. What about the people sitting next to you? What about the people behind you or in front of you? Same pew. Well, what's your responsibility to them? Here's why I ask that, is because in the lobby over the last several years, I continue to have this repetitive conversation with people. And it's a conversation that has different forms or different formats, but it pretty much is stated in a very similar fashion. It just, people say these things to me like, I've never been more connected in my life, but I feel so alone. And that may be true for you. But I know this, that people have so many contacts through so many networks, but they have no good close friend. They have nobody that comes alongside of them. I don't know if that's you. But in a recent study, academic journal called the Journal of Happiness Studies, they were trying to determine this one simple question. The researchers were trying to identify what makes human life flourish. What makes human life worthwhile? What gives value to those of us who are of the human race? And it was interesting because they discovered that what distinguished very happy people from less happy people was simply one consistent factor that separated those two groups of people. And it wasn't how much money that they had that made people happy or made them flourish or gave them value. It wasn't their good looks. It wasn't their attractiveness. It wasn't their IQ. It wasn't where they lived in life. It wasn't their health. It wasn't any security that they had in life. It wasn't their career. Matter of fact, the one distinguishing characteristic that consistently came up about happier people versus less happy people was this: the presence of a rich and deep, joy-producing, life-meaning relationship. Like the people around you have the ability to give your life meaning and purpose and value and worth. And that's an amazing thought. And so to determine for you, is that me? Think about these questions that they were asking. Like when something goes wrong in your life, do you have at least one friend that you can easily talk to them about it? Is that you? Do you have a friend that he or she can just drop into your apartment, your home, your neighborhood without calling, just at any time? Do you have one of those? Do you have one or more friends who you meet with regularly and who know you well enough to trust their confidentiality? Like you could tell them anything. Like when you receive good news, like maybe you're going to have a baby, or when you get a promotion or you get a raise or whatever at work, do you have anybody in your life that you could call them immediately so that they could celebrate the joy that you have in your life? Is there someone who could accurately describe your greatest temptation? Let me get a little closer to home. Is there anyone in your life who could actually accurately describe your greatest fear? And they know you so well. Because I know people well enough. I've been around them all of my life. And I know this about people: that if it's not at the top of the list, one of your greatest fears is simply this question: do I matter? Do I matter? That's the question from which 1,000 other fears just kind of flow from your life. Do we matter to anybody? Is anybody watching? Do I matter? And the reason we ask that question is because we fear that we don't. Like we feel insignificant. We fear irrelevance. We fear that we're worthless. We fear that we're unimportant. We fear that when all is said and done, that when all of life is tabulated and you get to the bottom of the page, like at the sum of all of my life, there's not going to be much there. We fear coming and going and walking through life and no one seems to notice and no one seems to know that I'm even alive. It's that same feeling you get when a friend forgets to call you, or when a teacher forgets your name, or when a coworker takes credit for something that you've done. See, our great fear, our greatest trepidation is that no one cares for us. And because we think that, we think we're not worthy of being cared about. And so because of that, we will crave the attention of our spouse, or we'll try to find the attention of someone. We'll look for the affirmation from a boss. We'll literally, when we're in conversations with people, we'll drop the names of someone special someone that we think we're connected to, like we actually might, so people might think we know them. Because we know that if we drop in someone who's special, then people might think we're special. It's interesting how we work. We wear rings on our fingers. We change our fashion statement. We accessorize our cars and our trucks, don't we? We will actually put a silk tie around our neck because we want to rise above the nobodies to be noticed by somebody. I think we're forever trying to prove a guy by the name of Bertrand Russell incorrect. Bertrand Russell is a famous atheist. Does not believe in God. Matter of fact, he doesn't believe that life is even worth anything. That's why he makes this statement. That's why you and I, throughout the course of our life, try to prove him wrong. He makes this statement: I believe that when I die, my bones will rot and nothing shall remain of my ego. There won't be anything left of me. It doesn't matter. My life means nothing. And in our minds, we're thinking, is he right? Do I mean nothing to anyone? Can he be right? Surely there's more worthiness to me than that. And Jesus would answer, he isn't right. Because you hear the words of Jesus when Jesus speaks these things to a group of people like you sitting down listening to him talk. He said, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care, and even the very hairs of your head are numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than a sparrow. Aren't you excited about today? This is amazing to me because we monitor all kinds of resources about ourselves. We monitor how much money's in the bank. We monitor how much gas is in the car, how much food is on the table, how much weight is on a scale. We monitor resources. But the hair on your skin, like who's counting that, right? We cut hair and we style hair, we color hair, but we don't count hair because we don't think it's of any, but God does. God actually numbers them. And that's an amazing thought to me. But when you think about it, our community in which we live, the church in which you sit in, is full of people. If you don't believe me, just ask them. Get in a conversation. Our church is full of people who feel disposable and indispensable. They don't even feel like they're worth a hair follicle or a feather on a bird. Jesus says, no, you're worth far more. You're worth far more than that. Several years ago in an orphanage in China, an orphanage that took care of children who specifically were deaf and mute, children who were literally thrown out of their society. Literally, one day they were shown how much they were worth. You know this about China, that for the longest time, since 1950 all the way up until 2015, they had a one-child policy for every family. You could only have one child. And that policy weeded out all the weaker children. Males were chosen over females. Those children who were healthy, they outranked those who were impaired. And those children who couldn't speak or couldn't hear were actually given little chance for a productive life. So every child in this orphanage had heard the same message over and over their entire life. You know what that message was? You don't matter. Until one day someone told them otherwise. Until one day someone read them something. And you know what happens when you get to that point and you start to realize that about yourself. Like a guy by the name of John Bentley, who was a missionary in China, and he described a moment when these children were given a book. Each one of them were given a book entitled "You Are Special." It's a children's story about a little wooden boy who lives in a village full of wooden people. And that wooden people village would stick stickers on those kids who were achievers, star stickers. But on the kids who weren't measuring up, they would just stick these little dots on them. And one little wooden boy, he had so many dots on him because people were just randomly sticking them on him for no reason, no apparent reason whatsoever. And he had no self-worth, no self-esteem. And in this little story, this young boy had so many dots on him that he literally felt worthless. Until one day he met Eli. Eli was his maker, his toy maker. And Eli told him, don't you listen to the opinions of others. Don't you listen to the comments of others. And he said these words in the book, I made you, and I don't make mistakes. And that young wooden boy had never heard such words, and all of a sudden the sticker started to fall off his body. And in that orphanage, when those children read those words, or heard those words, or had those words spoken over them, their world began to change. And John, the missionary, described it this way. He said that when we first distributed those books among those children and the staff at the school, the most bizarre thing happened. At a certain point, everyone, great word, everyone started to cry. I couldn't understand the reaction. Americans are used to the idea of positive reinforcement, but not so in China, particularly for these children who have been abandoned and considered worthless by their natural parents because they were born to be broken. So when the idea came through the reading of this simple book that they were special simply because a creator had made them special, everyone started to cry, including the teachers. Don't forget, church, don't forget, people are worth it. Like you never know. And maybe this morning those words are falling on the ears of some of you who just need a reminder that you matter. Maybe these words are falling on those who are second-guessing God's desire for you. Maybe there are some of you in here who are struggling with this one simple thought, that God's not stopped thinking about you. Like he hasn't stopped thinking about you since the day you came into existence. That if you could count, it's an amazing thought. If you could just count the thoughts of God about you, they would number the sands on the shore. You know why? Because you're his masterpiece. You're his idea. And you know this about God. God has no bad ideas. He only has good ideas. But listen, if one is greater than the 99 outside the church, so what is the person sitting next to you worth? What is the person sitting across the room worth to you? What are the people inside the church worth? What are the people that call Valley View their home? What are we worth to you? Because if we'll go to great lengths to find what is lost, to what extent will you go to encourage someone who's near? To what extent? Like, what is your responsibility to those who are actually connected to God, who are not far from God? What do relationships look like in the church? Have you ever wondered what we're supposed to be doing with each other? Well, the writer of Hebrews gives us an example. He gives us a clue as to what we're called to do with each other. And notice what it says. Hebrews chapter 10, it'll be up on the screen. Verse 24, it simply says this, let us. He's writing to Christians. He's writing to those of us who call Jesus our Savior, people like Emma, people like Paris, who are saying, yes, I want you to be my master and Lord. Let us consider how we, don't miss that word we, how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Like, did you catch the equation? I don't know if you caught the equation. But if it's one thing to say I love you, but it's a completely different thing to demonstrate I love you. Like, it's one thing to say, brother or sister, hey, I love you. But it's a completely different thing to show that you love them. It's one thing for you to say, I belong to this church, but it's a completely different thing to demonstrate it to the people who call this place their home. So here's what I want you to memorize. I got it down to 2 words, maybe 3, maybe 4. When I think about it, it's actually an equation. I want you to memorize it. I don't want you to walk out of here without this. That serving is greater than saying. Serving is greater than saying. Like there's nothing more relationally powerful than you serving those that you love. And like, you know this, the church talks a lot about serving one another. Jesus actually expects us to do it, not just to nod our head at this statement. Matter of fact, there's a quiet little scene from the life of Jesus that kind of turns the volume up on this for us. Like during his final Passover meal, when Jesus was with his disciples, just before one of his closest friends and followers, Judas, betrays him, do you know what Jesus does? You know what he does. He washes his disciples' feet. And I can't express how significant that thing is. How significant this one event is. That washing the feet of someone is the job of a slave, is the job of a servant. Like people of nobility and wealth had slaves who would perform this menial task. And just imagine the master of a home coming home from a long day's work or a far away journey, and he comes to the threshold of his door and he calls to the servant. The servant comes to his feet and takes off his shoes and literally wipes the mud and the filth off his feet so he can walk into his home. And that servant's position is the one that Jesus kneels down and chooses to place himself in. Jesus, the Son of God, washes the feet of not those who are noble, but for those who are dirty. And Jesus was demonstrating his love for them and his commitment to them, and he wanted to make it clear, crystal clear for you and I as his followers, that he did not consider himself too high, too mighty to do such a menial task. Because most personal tasks that you could do for someone else. And it's not surprising that at the end of this story, as John records this event, that he records what Jesus says after this meal. He says these words in John chapter 13, "A new command that I give you. As I have loved you, you must love one another." Talking about believers. You must love one another. By this, everyone will know. Everyone in the room, everyone outside the room, everyone will know. That word everyone is exclusive to everyone, right? Everyone will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. Like it's important for you and I to consider what Jesus didn't say in that passage. He didn't say everyone's going to know that you're my disciples if you have perfect theology. Like, good theology is important. But that's not how people are going to know if you're his disciple. Jesus didn't say everyone will know that you're my disciples if you just show up at church, grab a coffee, find a seat, watch the show, leave. Like, you guys realize this isn't a concert. It's church. And we're supposed to love each other. Like, we're supposed to spend time together encouraging one another in the things of God. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if you somehow got together with other people in the room, other followers of Jesus, and just dreamed up ways to motivate one another towards love and good works, love and good deeds? Like, how can we become so, I'll use the word, aggressive in how we show love to one another that people would actually stop and think, those people who watch us interact with each other, they would actually stop and think, oh, those guys must be Christian because have you seen how they love each other? That would be amazing. That it would be more than mere words. Because Jesus sets himself up as the example for us, as an act of absolute humility. Like there's nothing, you are not worth less to me. You are worth so much to me that I would do anything in my power, even if I had to humble myself. That's how the world will know that we are his disciples. Like when serving becomes greater than saying it, when we actually do it. But you know what I've noticed? And you probably noticed this too, that far too many people are looking at their phones instead of at people. Right? Like we need less thumb-to-thumb interaction and more face-to-face interaction. Don't we? And don't hear me say that technology doesn't have its place. Because it does. But it has its proper place. But can I just tell you this? It's hard to wash somebody else's feet with a phone in your hand. Isn't it? So be honest with yourself. Do a little inventory. Are you sending more emails when phone calls could be more meaningful? Are you typing a quick text when a personal visit would impact somebody that you love? When was the last time you actually did what I said earlier on, when you took out a piece of paper and you wrote a handwritten note and actually took it to a mailbox and so that they could open it up and you could watch, maybe figuratively, their face light up that you wrote them a note? Because the writer of Hebrews goes on to say this, and let us not neglect commenting on one another's posts on Facebook. No, that's not what he says, right? He says this, and let us not give up. And let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. I need to say that again. Let us not neglect coming together. Let us not neglect meeting together. Let us not grow tired of coming into this room where it's full of people who need encouragement. Let's not neglect coming together. Do you get it? Let us not neglect coming together, meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. In other words, some people stop, but encouraging one another is all the more till you see that day approach. Like, if this passage isn't enough to convince you that thinking about friendship in the context of your Christian faith, then think about what Jesus said. He said this, where two or more of you are gathered together, there I am with you also. Talking about in context where there are burdens that we carry in life. Let me put that in a phrase in which you can memorize. If serving is greater than saying, then presence is greater than absence. Presence is greater than absence. Like, there's nothing more relationally powerful than the presence of another person in your midst. Like, presence is powerful. And Jesus promises that whenever we come together with other believers in his name, you and I will get to experience not only his presence, but we'll experience his presence in a supernatural way. Like, there's something powerful that happens when we come together with other believers to seek God about our week and about our day. Like, when you join hands with somebody, when we put our faith together, and we go before God and his throne, we will experience his power and his presence like we've never felt it before in our life in very real and tangible ways, just like they did in Acts chapter 16. Something supernatural happens when we join together with other believers and we literally lift our hands in worship before our God to worship him, just like they did in Exodus chapter 17. Like, when something supernatural will happen when we, together with other believers, and as other believers have done for centuries, opened up the Word of God in front of God, and we read it out loud together, just like Nehemiah did in Nehemiah chapter 8. Something supernatural happens. Something supernatural happens when we unite our faith and we passionately seek God together in prayer, just like they did in Acts chapter 12. Do you realize how powerful presence is? Presence is greater than absence. It's greater than absence. Because here's how I know that God didn't shout down from heaven, hey, I'm here and I love you. No, he sent his presence down to earth to demonstrate his love to us. He stripped himself of all of his heavenly glory to take on an earthly feature and become flesh in the person of Jesus. And even one of the names of Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, demonstrates that kind of power. He came and lived with us. He loved the people that other people rejected. He poured his heart out to those that the religious people in the community would throw away. He hung out with them. He even ate with them, like we talked about last week, with sinners and tax collectors. Presence is powerful. So here's my thought for you. Why do so many of us opt for something else than for being here? Why? Like if you would really like to see God's Spirit present in all of your relationships, you should actually get together with people, right? And especially God's people. To be physically present with one another, not digitally, not virtually, not in a group text, but in a living room. Like, you need to get together with them. Like make time to love people face to face, not just keyboard to keyboard, but face to face. Don't set a time limit on how long you're going to be together, and don't set don't set up something that you're going to discuss. Just get together. It's okay because God says, I will be there with you. Paul told the Roman church this. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Don't just say that at a very shallow level that we've all become used to, he says. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. And then he goes on to say this just a verse later. When God's people are in need, be ready to help those in need. Like love people, really love people, be present in their life. Do you realize this, that maybe someone in this room just received a message from a doctor that isn't good news. Maybe someone who's younger didn't get into the school that they really wanted to get into. Maybe someone has a son or daughter who lost their scholarship. Maybe someone had a boyfriend or girlfriend just break up with them. Maybe a spouse has just discovered some kind of truth about their spouse, and it's just tearing their world apart. Like whatever difficulty a friend or a loved one might be going through, what is acceptable? What is an acceptable way for you just to love them? Because many people might say, they might just say it, or they might say just shooting a text is good enough. Like, hey, I'm thinking about you, or hey, I'm praying for you. But listen, church, we can do better than that. Can't we? Isn't that the heart of our church? That we can do better than a text or an email. Like you realize that device that you use to send a text with also has another function, right? You can actually talk into that thing. And people on the other end can hear you. And it's a lot harder, and I know you're wondering, what would I say? It's going to be awkward, but can I just give you what to say? How are you? How are you? Like really, how are you? It's not that difficult. Like a person-to-person conversation will go so much further than any text could ever go. And as they answer their phone, you know what's going to happen. You're actually going to hear their voice. You're actually going to hear the tone of their voice. You're actually going to hear the words that they choose, not the words that they edit, but the words that they choose to speak out of their heart. And when you hear those words, you're going to actually be able to respond back to them and communicate something, and maybe at the end of that conversation, you will get to be able to pray with them. So let's say this. Let's say that you take that a step further and you decide to get really crazy. Like you're not just going to text them, you're not just going to call them, but you might actually go to them. And you're thinking, wow, Joe, you better slow down, right? But maybe you could get in your car. You could fire up that little scooter that you bought, pedal your kid's bike. I don't care how you get there. You could just sit down with your friend face to face and ask them a few questions. And then just listen. And as a church, maybe pray for them. And if they start to cry, which more than likely they will, that's okay. Because maybe that's what really needs to happen. Maybe at that point you could wrap your arm around their shoulder and just squeeze them a little tighter. Or if you're a guy, you could just like punch them in the shoulder and call it good. You just let them know that you're right there with them. You know why? Because presence is powerful. Presence is powerful. And it's greater than your absence. And as much as those tech providers want us to believe that we can stay connected wherever we are and whatever we're doing, it's not the same as being there. And not only do you need to be physically present, but you need to be emotionally engaged. Engage deeply, like go all in. Don't hold back. Make sure that the person you're with feels like they're the most important person in the world at that moment when you're together with them. You know why? Because we've become so used to being interrupted by that thing in our pocket. It interrupts some of our best human-to-human interactions. And maybe we get interrupted by another human activity or by something else. But when we're face to face with somebody who matters to us, instead of being with them the entire time, you know what happens? We get involved in other things and we kind of check out. And we're somewhere else virtually or digitally or electronically. But when we're present, we need to be there. We don't need to be consumed by that thing. Like every time it buzzes and dings and whistles and chimes, I get it. I know what we're thinking. We all ask the same question, who was that? What did they want? Why are they texting me now? Maybe I should answer that. You know why? Because not only do we have this fear of not mattering, we have this fear of missing out. And we're constantly worried about what we're going to miss. Maybe you're just going to miss a cat picture. Maybe you're going to miss the next viral video that people will talk about at work tomorrow. Or maybe you're so afraid you're going to miss out on that trailer of that one movie that doesn't come out for 8 months. Or you might miss someone liking a post that you made 20 minutes ago. Can I just be honest with you? That life is not about how many likes you get. It's about how much love you give. And you can end up living your whole life for likes, but there's going to be a whole room full of people who are longing to be loved. And I don't want you to miss them as a church. And the only way people know that you're a follower of Jesus is when you love people. So please don't miss out on the people in front of you. You might miss out on your kid. You might miss out on an incredible intimate relationship with your spouse. You might miss out on a friendship in life. All I know is this, that people are worth it. They're worth words, touch. They're worth my time to listen. They're worth my prayers. Like each gift that you and I give feeds a soul. And when we work to truly love another person, our own soul starts to flourish because you want to know something? Do you know how many people come into this place alone? You know how many people walk out of the parking lot, get out of their car, walk into a building, come sit alone, worship alone, and then leave alone? I love what Mother Teresa says. She says, if you can't do great things, then do little things with great love. And if you can't do them with great love, do them anyway. Even if you don't love them, just do them. Like the deepest words of your soul are simply, I love you. That's why Paul wrote to the church in Rome, let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another. Every moment that you have is an opportunity to express who you follow. And the mark of the early church was a commitment to stay connected. Because they knew that connectedness doesn't just happen. That's why they ate together every day. That's why they met together every day. That's why they got together with glad and sincere hearts, as Scripture says. In other words, you need to stay committed to community because otherwise it will fade from your life and you will be alone. Robert Putnam says this. He writes a lot of books. But he made this staggering statement one day. He says, as a rough rule of thumb, if you belong to no groups, but then you decide to join a group, you've cut your risk of dying in half over the next year. It's difficult to imagine someone not being interested in cutting their risk of dying in half. That's why our new motto for our small groups at church is this: join a group or die. Every day, every one of you, everyone you know, faces a life without eternity or with eternity on the line. And life has a way of just beating people down. That's why every life needs a cheerleading section. And every life needs a shoulder to cry on. And every life needs a prayer to lift them to God. And every life at some point will need arms to be wrapped around them. And every life will need a voice saying, don't give up, you matter. Don't give up, you matter. People are worth my encouragement. And so I'm just simply asking that as a church, you just couldn't wait to get here for Sunday because people matter and they're worth it to you. Like people you haven't seen all week where their fears are going to be addressed and they're going to know that you love them. So could we just change what happens in the lobby and in here? Could we just change our conversations? Could you stop asking people how they are because you know what they're going to answer? I'm fine and I'm busy. You know that about them already. So ask them how grateful they are. What are you grateful for? Ask them what burden they're carrying. Could you help carry it with them? Ask them how their group is going. If they're not in a group, ask, can I get you in one? Can out of genuine concern, can you just tell people you miss them? Like, could you just simply say, what is it I could pray for you about? Because listen, the questions that you ask only reveals how much worth they are to you. Can you imagine being a part of a church where deep questions are asked of people? This past week, I was rummaging through a file in my office, and I ran across this little piece of paper. I have a file where people have sent me encouraging notes over my lifetime. I'd encourage you, because when you have a bad week, you need to go to a file like this one. And start rummaging through, and I found this little piece of paper, and it's from 25 years ago, a little kid, a little boy. And it just simply says, let me hand it to you, all right? And it's got a little picture, a sticker with Snoopy on it. It says, thought of you today. So I opened it up. It says, Joe, you're cool. Get better fast. Then it says, love Daniel. You know who Daniel is? He's the one up here a while ago who was leading you in worship. I just know this. We will go to great lengths to find that which is lost, but we will hang on to whatever is valuable in life. And people are worth my encouragement. I hope they are to you. Let's pray. God in heaven, I can't thank you enough for your son Jesus, who gives us a day-to-day example of what it means to love people. Father, to subject ourselves to sometimes very humbling acts just to demonstrate love. God, what an amazing thought. God, more than anything, we want to love people so that people would know that we follow you. Father, would our church, would this group of people, would this room somehow be filled with people who just love others? Where people can come into this place and feel safe and secure and know that they matter, know that they're not going to miss out if their phone rings or dings or whatever. Lord God, would you just let us love people? Father, make us that. Work on us every day. I pray that we practice it. I hope we don't just nod our heads at that. I hope that we work at it. God, would you find us faithful to that task? It's in your son's name that I pray. Amen. Love you guys.